Bueno, buenos días a todos.
Good morning, all.
Estamos en la rueda de prensa previa a
We
la
are
pública
presenting a roundup for new confederation of MSCs and multi-sector. As you all know, we are going to start with
En primer lugar, os
a
voy a
round.
presentar a las
I'll present the three people that are presiding the table.
lugar en el centro,
First,
Roca, el presidente
José Luis Roca, the president of CONPYMES.
a su izquierda,
On his left, on your right,
a don Antoni Cañete,
Mr. Antoni Cañete, who's the vice president and also president of PIMEC. And
el presidente
on the right,
a su izquierda,
on your left, María José Landaburu, vice president of CONPYMES and general secretary of UTAI. And I will ask you, please, in the same order, to say hello to all of you, and then we will start the meeting. Thank you, Juan Manuel. I will make a quick thank you to all of you, both those present and those virtually present in this meeting. We will be very brief. I will not let the introduction to any of you. I will make a brief presentation myself, and then we are ready for you to give us your questions. CONPYMES is employers association which has recently been registered in the ministry, but we have been working since 2016, a series of organizations of SMEs. We have been working on these things, which is the main point of our organization. We had 2 years of meetings. In 2018, we started a platform called CONPYMES, which did not have a character of an association of employers. Then in 2020, we have kept working through the pandemic until we created CONPYMES. What is special about CONPYMES? Because in the world and in Spain, there are other employers associations of pymes and self-employed people. When we started this project in 2016, we decided we should defend a different production model. The present in all advanced economies in Europe and in the US, and then was classical capitalism was finished, and important organizations such as FME and OECD are certifying this. The central bank, it was not only our own idea, but we wanted to know what other economic model we wanted to create. Of course, we are employers, and as employers, we try to find profits, but we are capitalists, and we fight positions that may be against capitalism. But we thought this model would be finished, and we reached the conclusion that we need a growth sustainable model, more inclusive, with equal opportunity among companies, because a large part of the world is within large corporations where small companies cannot compete, and that 50% of the world production makes it all advanced economies as low production, and economies based on a monetary policy of low interest and expansion of balance, which is created zombie companies. In that defense of competition, we thought that the best representation of the defense of competition, which is the base of all free markets, is the SMEs. Same opportunities against oligopolies of large production, so that distribution of wealth in the whole country should not be only through transfers and taxes, but to have a fair production of prices, so the companies and society would benefit through competition, so we could reach that objective. This goal is very aggressive. It's not easy to reach. It's not a process requiring only the presence or the act of a Spanish organization, but it must extend to Europe, the European Union. And through that model, we believed that the first guarantors of that was SMEs and self-employed. And from there, we started our project which I believe that is our differential fact. From now, these are philosophical matters, but our companies, the SMEs and the self-employed, require truths and new realities based on this economic model, which is the wire that runs through our proposals and makes us different from other organizations of SMEs and self-employed in Europe and the rest of the world, because we are looking for this kind of inclusive capitalism. What is the economic model we are fighting for? I believe that is the center of our goal as an organization. And now, in the questions, we can go down to what our SMEs and self-employed can want at this time, which is very complicated from the public health point of view, and that complexity has not changed, and the pandemic has complicated these problems even more that SMEs in Spain and throughout Europe had on our desk. And this principle, this philosophic principle, we have to try to help our SMEs translating it into actual facts. And we hope we will be able to explain to you. So please, we are prepared to listen to your questions. Good morning, all, and thank you for your being here or following us, because you are our loudspeaker to tell society and our institutions and governments what we are presenting today by presenting the Spanish Confederation or the National Confederation of SMEs in Spain. I think it's worth stating that the presentation we are doing today of this confederation, we are giving a voice and a representation to 99.8% of our companies, which produce more than 70% of employment and also 60% of the gross produce. The motor of our economy has been SMEs, the chance of having their own voice to defend their interests and to represent them. Therefore, what we have created, all these organizations, the sector organization and territorial in all Spain, is to be able to channel this voice, to be represented and defended. This organization is not against anyone. It's to represent all. And in this sense, it's most of our economic weave. SMEs having no voice or participation or notoriety in this and defending their interests is an anomaly in our economy, which we must correct. And also we need to equalize our employers with the rest of Europe. All countries in the European Union and the European Union itself have employment organizations of large companies and small companies which are separate. And that's a question in which we, with the representation of SMEs and the participation also of self-employed, we want to have a voice, an authorized voice that be able to bear this representation. As the President said, in the questions we will be able to explain in more detail our objectives, our aims, and the problems that these SMEs and self-employed have in our country. Of course, I want to thank us, my friends, for waiting and being here, and any problems you may have had, and only want to point a couple of clear ideas. I am Secretary General of an organization of self-employed, and we are aiming at the smallest of the companies. Of course, we are proud of that. We generate quality, talent, effort. During pandemic, that was very clear. But also, we are small, and that makes us proud, because our small thing creates our streets, our main streets, our towns, and the essence of our country. And yet, in my opinion, our constitutional right and our constitutional obligation of being represented in a dialogue where public policies are agreed, where the model of country is projected, we have not been sufficiently represented. And that's easy to explain. Obviously, a same organization cannot defend Uber and a taxi, or Amazon and a cycle. We know what we need. I feel quite comfortable in this very plural organization where all sensibilities fit, where all territorial expressions fit, all sectors fit, with the same voice, the same opinion, and the same importance. And lastly, there's one thing I would really like to represent here. From CONPYMES, we not only defend partial interests, we only want to defend SMEs or self-employed to produce better position for them. We feel we are part of a society, of a political and economic scenario, and we want to contribute and use our responsibility to contribute. There will be no transition of ecology or technology or quality employment or participation of women in companies as long as we are not there to defend and represent it. Thank you. Vice President, let's start the questions in this press conference. We will do as follows. First, because all the newsmen that have been arrived here, we will start with you. You raise your hand and I will give you the chair so you can, the floor, so you must say your name, the media you and who you want to ask. The same order will follow again when you have finished of asking questions. We will let the reading through the chat, the Zoom chat of all newsmen that are following the press conference through your homes. Again, we'll ask you your name, the medium you are representing, and the person you want to ask, and then I will read the question itself. So, the President tells us, of course, we started late, as you can see. We have until 15 or 20 past for this question and answer, and then they ask a question. So, whoever is here wants to ask a question, we are ready. Please. Josep Capellanos, TV3, I want to ask, Mr. Cayete, as you are part of my territory, you said that you're not fighting anyone, but the constitution of this confederation has created problems with the large employer associations. Why do you think they are worried? And you also said we are going to separate SMEs, and also the Vice President. How's that going to end? What's your final goal? That presence in what places, in what bodies? I'll say one thing. Our final goal is to be an instrument to solve the hard problems of SMEs and self-employed in Spain and Europe. This is our will, our aim, and our need to be useful and to work. But going down to the ground, however much has been written these days, CONPYMES is not fighting anyone or against anyone. It comes to fill a democratic participation area for representation, and that's very important for us because it's one of our goals, to place SMEs and self-employed in the bridge, in the steering wheel where representation and defense happens. In our country, SMEs, which are 99.8%, have not a own voice in having the chance of defending their interests. Is an anomaly in the area of representation, maybe because in these SMEs we have not used our representation, and therefore many places, we have been used for other types of interests, sometimes against us. So a clear goal is to place SMEs and self-employed in the steering wheel where the social dialogue happens. Also, we want to make a call to all association world, the companies, and to participate. If self-employed and our society does not participate in the representation, and we don't feel that space, then the representation or defense will be different from that of SMEs and self-employed. One other question for us, which is very important, is to be able to translate to our governments and to our representative, our political representatives, that legislation must be made thinking in small size to be able to make this country great. Not segmenting laws, but have the same law for a 1,000 or a 20-room hotel makes this country less competitive, and the size of our companies is smaller. So we are not presenting CONPYMES against anyone. If there's anyone that feels attacked by the configuration of CONPYMES, of course, there is an organization that represents all companies in Spain, and that vertical organization has in the same organization different segments of representation. What we want, and it's an example, so you understand, when you have El Corte Inglés and a small corner shop in the same organization, you can be sure and prove that the decisions and the proposals made will not come from the small corner shop. So we don't go against anyone. We want that micro become small, that small become medium, and medium become large. That our organization comes to make those that create wealth and employment, which is self-employed and SMEs, have the conditions to make this country more competitive and large. I would also want to say one thing. You will think, yes, of course, there is some organization that already represents SMEs, but there's a key question here is that representativity cannot be given. Representativity must be won. People give it to you from below, from the grassroots. The SMEs, the self-employed give it, and they must back you and vote. That's what legitimacy is about in democratic countries, and that is what social dialogue can talk with the representative of the people. And that's the main difference between others and ourselves, that we want to democratize the process of representativity in this country. So they and all of us will be there if sometime people decide it. And if they don't decide it, then others will be able to do it. And to finish, as Maria Jose said, we have plurality, and that enriches us, the various points of view. I insist. We defend a production model which is very clear, which we call inclusive capitalism, and our presentation today will be CONPYMES, a new association for SMEs and self-employed in the frame of European capitalism. And that model requires equal opportunities, lead competition in a section of the country economy, and in that area sometimes we want to chase the messenger, but not. Many financial international organisms has remained in the theoretical plan. I think we believe that that model of capitalism is waste is finished, and in that competition the best actors that guarantee that open of competition to other sectors that have been outside are SMEs and self-employed, for equal opportunities and a fair share of prices, so companies and consumers are going to benefit. Luis Merino from Renewable Energy magazine. If there is a sector where the large companies and oligopolies have done things as they wish, and that's recognized by even some ex-ministers in the energy sector. I would like to know what CONPYMES can produce, can help in this area. The energy model, we have an organization of photovoltaic energy, and that's very, and we are wondering how these auctions of power are being given, and the scale economy is not happening. The model is on large scale in the rest of Europe, and these auctions are not favoring having small photovoltaic fields. They are favoring that many of these offers are made by international funds that favoring sometimes by expansive central bank monetary policy. It's a very good question. It happens in many fields of the world economies, not only in Spain, where there is no competition and where dominant positions in monopolies. We, as an organization of SMEs, have nothing against the large companies. Large companies competing and have no dominant position and reach the market and generate productivity and contribute to general interests. The problem is that small part of the SMEs that are out of competition. What we cannot pay is when we segment the cost of energy. Our SMEs pay more than 20% expensive energy in Portugal and France, for example. Any more questions from newsmen here? We have 5 minutes or more to finish this act, this press conference. Gloria Prado from TV, Spanish TV. It's a very intense time of social dialogue, fighting pandemic, and start recovery. At what time are you planning to become part of these discussions in matters such as the temporary unemployment? What is your position? We'll let Maria Jose speak about hope. I believe it's very difficult to avoid that an organization with this representation sooner than later will be part of the discussion process. We are doing it already in other areas, but we want to be at the core of social dialogue, which is what we believe belongs to us. We hope it will be like that soon. In regard to the extension of the temporary unemployment, they must be extended. The companies and self-employed and workers, laborers must be attended, and that must be done immediately. And in regard to self-employed, we are discussing that with the Minister of the Social Security. We are hoping to be called for a negotiation to work together and to have the agreement of rebuilding that created a certain solidarity model, a protective model, and that's what we're working on. I must say, capacity of participation we have immediately. Representation for that too, we also have it. If we don't do it and it's not done, we should ask what is happening in our country, that an organization that represents what CONPYMES represents and is needed for this social dialogue and this transformation in which we're going to live is not present. There must be some anomaly. As the Vice President said, there are already organizations that have certified their representation and their participation. As a president of EPIMEC in Catalonia, we have a registered employers map in which there is no problem, accepted by Europe, so nobody must become nervous. This is nothing different from what is happening already, and we have the capacity and the representativity to do it. And the importance of being able to supply important parts and proposals for SMEs and self-employed. Thank you, Vice President. President, following the protocol and our agenda of the 2 acts we had this morning, we finish now this press conference. We have many questions here sent from the other side. They will all have answer both in the act that will happen now. There are too many questions, and I don't think I can read them all. I'm saying because of the timetable, but they will all be replied. They will all have answers. Syndicates are legitimated on companies by voting and labor union selections. We don't know what is the backing of the presence of the other 2 organizations, because they have never have any recognition. So we are open if you want to present certificates to know who we are. If we want to have us voting, we will be happy. The Statute of Worker talks about a representation at the state level by the organizations there are. It could be notoriety and then participation to CONPYMES, but also there's a percentage of participation. But in our democracy, and after 40 years, no mechanism has been created where that measure will have that condition. So the regulation, what we have certified at present, organizations that are on CONPYMES, with all transport in Spain, with all the primary sector, transport with Huachay in the self-employed, PYME Baleares, Menorca, that have artificial certifications, and EPIMEC, which represents all the companies in the sector, is much more than enough to have the minimum that should be for participation. If CONPYMES have no participation as soon as possible, it says we will be against a democratic anomaly of participation in such an important area as the financial and company sector in this country, with 99.8% of companies, which are the motor of our economy. Thank you. As I said, in the presentation act, many of your questions will probably both those that are here, but those that are in the Zoom session may have answers, but any questions that have appeared in the chat will be all answered. Thank you all.